Thank you. Can you hear me okay in the back? Okay, perfect. I'm a musician, so I always start with a sound check. So I am a Portland native. I'm one of the few people who's not here from somewhere else. I grew up in Southeast Portland, and my journey's been a little different than many people you hear speak who are autistic, because I wasn't diagnosed until I was 14 years old. I was a freshman in high school, and typically children today are diagnosed as toddlers or in early intervention programs early in grade school. But growing up, I didn't have those supports that most kids with a disability have. I didn't have accommodations in the classroom. I didn't have teachers who understood. I was just the weird kid. I didn't fit in. I was awkward and socially inept. And because I was awkward and I stood out, I was a target for bullies. And it started early on in grade school, but nobody put a stop to it. And by the 4th, 5th grade, I was being beaten up every single day just because I was different. I was the smallest, youngest kid in my class, so the bullies' favorite game was to take me up to a hill at the far end of the playground, and they'd grab my arms and legs and swing me back and forth and see how far I would fly. And so I went to the playground aide, the large old lady with a loud silver whistle around her neck. She's the peacekeeper on the playground. And she said to me, "You need to figure out what you do that makes those other boys want to hit you." It's not the message you want to hear as a victim of bullies. So I bounced to different schools, to public schools, private schools. I tried everything, and I couldn't find anywhere that I fit in. So by the time I got into high school, I was frustrated, and I didn't fit in. I didn't connect. The only friends I made were definitely not good people to be around. And one day they called me into the principal's office, which was not unusual. I was always in trouble. But my parents were there, so I knew this time it was bad. And they said, "This lady's been following you around taking notes for weeks. And she's studied you like a spy. And now we know why you're different. You're autistic. And now that we understand, we want to help." I said, "Who the heck do you think you are? I'm 14 years old. I'm practically a grown man. For years, I've been asking for help from bullies. And now you want to help me? I don't think so." So I was offended. The label fit. It made sense. I am definitely autistic. But the way they went about it didn't feel very respectful. So I'm in school, but it doesn't work. I still don't feel supported. The teachers don't understand me. It's not working. And then my dad bought me my first bass guitar, a 1966 powder blue Kalamazoo short scale practice bass, the worst bass guitar ever built. And I loved it. I fell in love with music immediately. And by the time I turned 16, I dropped out of high school and I was working full-time as a musician, playing in bar bands around the Portland area, 4 sets a night, four nights a week, playing blues and classic rock and disco and jazz, whatever paid, I would play it. At 18, I took my first trip to Nashville, Tennessee, where I studied music with Victor Wooten of Bella Fleck and the Flecktones. So music was my life. It was my career. I had all of these connections in the business, and I felt like that was all I wanted to do with my life. But music burns you out. It is a hard thing to do for a living. And in my 20s, I felt this pull to do something different. And I started volunteering with autism organizations. And it grew from volunteer work into mentoring and consulting. And now I barely play music at all because I travel around the country speaking about autism and understanding people who are different. So my path is not a straight line to here. I never imagined this would be what I do for a living. But in the autism field and even outside of it, the question I hear so much is, what is autism? Because it's a word that means a lot, and it means different things to different people. How can we use the same label for a child who has no verbal skills at all and someone like me who talks way too much? It doesn't make any sense. It's because autism is what's called a spectrum disorder, meaning it impacts all of us in a different way, and everyone on the autism spectrum experiences it differently and has different, for lack of a better word, symptoms. But in my work in the field, meeting so many young adults and kids and families and meeting so many people, I've looked at what do we all have in common? And there are two areas that are alike for everyone across the spectrum of autism: how we process information and how we prioritize information as we take it in. Now, right now, all of you in this room are taking in a ton of data. You're not just taking in the words that are coming out of my mouth. It's the feel of the clothing against your skin, the hum of the fan in the ceiling. The light on that side of the room is different from that side of the room. You're not thinking about any of that. You're focused on the words coming out of my mouth, and your brain has this amazing ability to suppress all that other stuff and say, that's not important. We're not going to think about the fact that our sock is twisted just a little bit between our toes. You can suppress that information. I can't. That's not how autistic minds work. So when we prioritize all of this data, item 1A is the speaker, item 1B is my sock, item 1C is the hum of the air conditioner, item 1D is the lights, and I'm trying to process it all at the same time and with equal mental processing power. It's just like a computer. When you run one program at a time, it works really well, and when you run all your apps together, it slows down. So our minds are always running way too much at once because we don't know how to decide what to turn off or what to turn down. But even the experience is fundamentally different. How we experience the world goes through a filter, so what we experience is different from most other people. I'll give you an example. In the world of sensory processing disorders, that's an aspect of autism. If we want to get technical, write some jargon down. Sensory processing. Now, it's okay to laugh because this is kind of silly. I'm a grown man. I feel like I'm fairly well adjusted, and I'm afraid of balloons. Regular, harmless birthday party balloons. I hate them. When I go to a restaurant, I don't look at the menu. I don't look for a good seat. I look for that little kid sitting in the back with his little hat and his little birthday presents and that dumb little cake and those balloons hanging over his table that say happy birthday. And I hate that kid. He just ruined my meal. Now, why would a grown man be afraid of balloons? What do balloons do? They pop. Now, for most of you, a popping balloon is no big deal. But for me, my brain has a crossed wire, and when I hear a sudden loud noise, I experience physical pain. It's like being punched in the stomach. I can't control it. It's definitely not a choice. It's just how I experience that sensation. So it's the fascinating challenge of autism. From the outside, all of you see something completely illogical and crazy. A grown man leaving a restaurant because of a strange kid's birthday party. That's crazy. That makes no sense. But from the inside, I see something that could harm me, and there's no way to protect myself or to anticipate what's going to happen. So my only options are remain in a threatening environment or leave. So it makes logical sense from the inside but not when you're looking at it from the outside. And that's the great challenge in understanding autism and supporting others who are on the autism spectrum, is we often make assumptions based on our perspective instead of theirs, and then we get it wrong. So our minds function in these different ways. How we process information, how we process sensory information. I'm so sensitive to touch, I can feel every thread in my clothing at all times if I let myself think about it. I can feel the weight of a guitar pick in my pocket. I can feel a coin on the other side and how it shifts my equilibrium a little bit. So I had to teach myself how to suppress that information. But all of this data coming in that we're struggling with, sensory data, social processing, it leads to anxiety. And the anxiety can come from so many things, from balloons for me, but for some people I work with, they're sensitive to the flickering of fluorescent lighting. And it's like trying to work in a room with a rave strobe light right in your face. Everyone else in the room, oblivious. But that one person, they cannot turn off their awareness of that light. And I think all of us, when you think about it, are somewhere on the autism spectrum. All of us have something from the checklist. I know there's someone in here who hates turtleneck sweaters. You can't explain it, but that scratchy feeling drives you crazy. I know there's someone in here who can't quite tell if your boss is being sarcastic or not. That's on the autism checklist. So we're all a lot more alike than we are different. The difference is people like me have everything on the checklist. And it's not just sensory processing. The other big piece of autism is social understanding, social communication. And every time I stand in a room like this, I look at all of you and I'm just amazed, because I look out at a room of superheroes, because every one of you has this amazing superpower, this sixth sense, and I'm so jealous. You could just sit down with a total stranger, talk to them for 30 seconds, and just know if they want to talk about football or not. You can sit down with a girl at a bar and just know if she wants your phone number. I don't know how you do it. It is amazing. It's like telepathy, because you do it naturally and you don't even think about it. You don't even think about how you read the people you communicate with. For me, I don't have that natural built-in superpower. So I had to learn my social skills like learning calculus. I had to learn to shake hands with practice. I had to practice making eye contact because it wasn't natural. And when I have a conversation, I do math. Okay, her eyes are up here. Her body language says this. Her word choice says this. She's glancing at her watch. It means I should shut up. Now, most of you can just tell. It's amazing to watch. You just know, but I don't. And that's very common for people on the autism spectrum. We lack that natural ability to read nonverbal cues and to read our social partners. So whether you're working with children or adults or friends or family, you'll often see people on the autism spectrum who come across socially awkward. We try to have a conversation, but we're not making eye contact. We're looking at our feet. Or we misread the people we're talking with. I thought she was interested. Turns out she was trying to get away. We struggle because we don't have that natural built-in communication superpower that you guys have. So it takes a lot more work. It's not to say that we can't learn, but the process is more intellectual. But it goes both ways. My little brother is also on the spectrum. He could read before he could speak. All his other peers had to sit down and learn their alphabet. My brother just knew it. He was born knowing how to read the newspaper. But he didn't have your superpower of reading the other kids on the playground. So it goes both ways. Autism isn't just a deficit. It's a completely different way of experiencing the world and interacting with other people. Everything is different. Now, socially, I've studied people for years. I've tried to work really hard to gain some of your natural ability to read people. And I thought I was doing a pretty good job. I had read books, I'd studied people, I'd go people watching just to read body language. And then I had a job as a temporary office worker, very glamorous, real rock star job, opening mail. And I walk into the building and I'm walking down the hallway and a coworker passes by me, and as we cross paths, he says, "How are you?" And he keeps walking. And I waited for him to come back so I could tell him. And he didn't. And I realized I was missing something. Those 3 words, "How are you?" still confuse me. Because the words aren't where the meaning is. Because I know if I write "How are you" on a piece of paper, there is a question mark at the end. But if we're passing each other in the hallway and you say, "How are you?" you are not communicating, "Hello, I would like to hear a story about your life." You are saying hello and goodbye. So the words aren't where the meaning comes from. The meaning comes from our environment, our nonverbal communication, our body language, the context of our relationship. But people like me tend to focus on the words first, and maybe we get to all that other stuff eventually if we're really paying attention. So you see people like me who misread social cues all the time. Because even "How are you?" 3 simple words go a lot deeper than you'd think. Because I know if I go into a job interview tomorrow and I sit down at the desk across from my potential employer and he opens by shaking my hand and saying, "Hi, how are you?" he doesn't really want to know. And if I take those words at face value and I tell him how I am, I might say, "Well, to be honest, I'm not too good. My cat was throwing up all night, so I'm really worried. I don't know if she ate garbage or what." And then on my way down to this interview, my car starts making this weird thump, thump, thump sound at every traffic light. So I'm super stressed out. And now I got to go to the mechanic and I got to take my cat to the vet. And how am I going to pay for all that? I really need this job. I am so anxious right now. How are you? It's not going to work. And at the same time, if I go out to dinner with an old friend, and we sit down and we haven't seen each other in a long time, and she looks across the table and says, "How are you?" If I say, "I'm fine," that doesn't work either. So these words mean so much more than the sounds that come out of your mouth. And that's the piece that's difficult for people like me. We experience the world differently with our sensory experience, with our social understanding, with these differences and how we process. And it's all invisible. That's what's fascinating and challenging in the disability world, is you don't know if you're talking to someone with a disability or not, because most of us look just like everyone else. All the differences are inside. So supporting people with autism is understandably a real challenge, whether you're at home or in your community or in the workplace. I understand that it's difficult to support people when you don't even know who it is you're targeting. So where do we start? Well, when I want to give directions to people who may or may not be on spectrum, but I want to make sure that I'm accommodating, I'm black and white. I remove all of the gray area. Now, what does that mean? I remember in grade school, a teacher said to me, okay, finish up your art project and then get ready for lunch. What the heck does that mean? Even now, today, I'm not quite sure what she wanted me to do, because art is very open-ended. How do you know when your art project is done? Is it because I colored in the whole paper? Is it because we ran out of time? Is it that in my heart of hearts, I know that this finger painting is as perfect and beautiful as it could ever be? I don't know what finished means. And then she says, get ready for lunch. How do you get ready for lunch? Like I'm supposed to will myself to be hungry? These instructions make absolutely no sense to me. So there I am, sitting in the classroom, completely overwhelmed, watching everyone else put their paint away and go get their lunch boxes and coats out of the closet. So those simple instructions didn't work for someone like me. To fix it, though, it's really simple. We frame it in black and white. Okay, everyone, in 5 minutes, we're going to be done with this project. Whatever state it's in, it's good enough. Then everyone go get your jacket and your lunchbox and line up at the door. Exact same expectation, but framed differently. So removing the gray area or assumptions from how you give instructions and directions. Be explicit. And you can never be too explicit for someone like me. If you're not sure what it means, state it clearly. We will never, ever complain that you gave us too much detail. That's not how we work. So in the workplace, if you're working with someone else giving instructions, don't assume that they're going to see the steps in between. Lay out everything. Now, we all process information differently, not just people on spectrum, but everyone. So I like to give my instructions in several mediums. I like to give it verbally. I like to give people a visual, usually written on a piece of paper or on a whiteboard. And when I can, I like to give them the hands-on experience or to walk them through so that they get that information and instruction in multiple ways. Because everyone, not just on spectrum, but everyone, different methods of learning click better. So I think that those little things, they make a difference. Another thing that people like me need is extra processing time. Because our minds are taking in all this data and we can't sift through it very efficiently, we need more time for even simple things. Now, some people see that and they think it's a lack of intellect, that we're missing the ability to complete tasks. And that's not it at all. The problem is we're still finishing the last task and going through our boot up sequence to start the next one. And if you've moved on, we don't have that natural ability to just catch up with you. So extra processing time, especially when you're changing tasks, makes a huge difference. Transitions can be really challenging, especially when they're sudden. So whenever I'm working with clients or coworkers anywhere, I like to set everyone up for what's coming next. Now, it sounds kind of silly when you'd think adults could change. You'd think everyone's flexible. What if I said, right now, everyone stand up, we're going to go finish this lecture outside on the street? That'd throw you a little bit, wouldn't it? I think you might be confused and you might think I was a little bit crazy. And if we went down there, you wouldn't trust me anymore because you'd be asking, what's he going to make us do next? What other curveball is he going to throw our way? I don't know what's happening anymore. This is chaos. But if he sent out an email this afternoon and said, okay, everybody, at 6:33, we're all going to go outside as a group, At about 6:25, I'd see some of you putting your jackets on. You'd be gathering up your things and getting ready for that transition because you'd see it coming. So it's not an autism thing. It's part of humanity. When you spring changes on people, not everyone's comfortable with it. But we're especially sensitive to those changes when we're on the autism spectrum. So I give directions in advance. I like to tell people what's coming. At 6:30, we're doing this. At 7 o'clock, we're going to go there. Just a heads up, in 10 minutes, a phone call's going to come in, and you have to be ready to take it no matter what you're working on. They're little things, but they add up. Now, most people, they have this another superpower. You can take in all this data, and you can process it at the same time and move on to whatever's next. But I need more time. So I end up with a backlog of things to process. I'd be processing in a room like this. When are we going downstairs? What do I need to take with me? Who was the person who talked earlier? What was her name? I got to remember to get her business card because she's really interesting. Where am I going after this? Do I have all my things? And I'm going to take all that stuff and process it slower. And the more stuff I process, the slower it goes. And I end up completely overwhelmed. Now, when people like me get overwhelmed, there are two reactions that are common. One is a shutdown, where we just stop functioning, and you'll come upon a student at their desk or an employee sitting in their cubicle just totally zoned out because they've just had enough and they can't do anything else. The other one, which was my preferred method as a child, was the meltdown, much more dramatic. I would get overwhelmed and I'd just say, I can't take it anymore. And I would leave, usually in school, saying some very unkind things to the teacher on my way out the door. Now, the meltdown is, again, a result of being overwhelmed, overstimulated. And I don't think that's just an autism thing. We're just more sensitive to it. I know everyone here has had days where you just know that you're this close to having enough, right? You're this close to telling your boss or your spouse or the guy who cut you off on the freeway that you're done. Some of us are just more sensitive to that feeling. So how do we address it? There are two ways. First, I give people time to process. And sometimes that means a complete break from intellectual processes. Maybe I need a break now. From intellectual stimulation, being actual tasks or assignments, from social stimulation, and from the sensory experience. So if you're trying to work in breaks for employees or coworkers or anyone in your life, look at all three of those areas and make sure that how you're accommodating them works on all three levels. When I was a kid, they said I needed a break, so they put me in the office. So I'm leaving the loud, bright, chaotic classroom to go to a room that's louder, brighter, has people coming and going, and there's phones ringing. And this is because it's a break for me. Doesn't work so well. The other thing that I think is important is a safety valve. When you've had enough and you just need to get away, you need a process to go through. So I will tell my clients, look, if you need a break, you don't have to ask permission. Just go. Go to the break room. Go take a walk down the hallway. Go get a donut down the street and come back when you're ready. And sometimes just knowing you have that option makes a difference. It's not even that you need to use it, it's knowing you're not trapped. Because so much of this is about perspective. Autism is a difference in perspective. And perspective is everything, our whole world. I'm fascinated in a room like this because we're all following rules that no one's stated. Everyone right here looks pretty calm, relaxed. Fair statement? Now, did any of us tell you what to do if you have to go to the bathroom? Or if you get a text from your babysitter? No. You just know what's appropriate and that you could just get up and go or take care of it or whatever you need to do. But imagine how this room would feel if you didn't know you had those options because we hadn't stated them explicitly. Suddenly that second coffee seems like a bad idea because you don't know when you're going to have the opportunity to get up and go. Now when your phone buzzes from a text, you're anxious because you don't know if you have permission to answer it or not. The whole room becomes a little more tense and stressful just because your perspective has changed by not knowing what the rules are. And that's the challenge with autism, is we don't know what the rules are unless they're stated. Or we learn them slower, or we guess and we get it wrong. So in supporting people on spectrum, all these little things make a difference. How we communicate, how black and white we are in our communication and sharing expectations, making sure that we're aware that other people's experience is different from ours. All these little things add up and they all go together. And to take you a little deeper into how different someone's perspective can be, I brought my bass with me. I'm going to play a little music for you and show you how the way I see music is very different, probably, than any of you see music. So this bass has been with me for a very long time. It's been all over the country. It's played Mustang Sally at least 700 times. I'm not proud of that. It's been all over the place. We're old friends. Thank you. So is the mic still working in the back? Okay, perfect. So I've played music for a long time. I've traveled the country studying music. I've played great gigs, and I've played terrible gigs. I've played bars and weddings. I played out in the desert for biker gangs. I've seen it all. And in both music and the world of autism, I've found that we both have this thing in common. We tend to see things differently. There are different thinkers both in the autism world and the music business. So I wanted to explore this a little bit. So I asked dozens of my musician friends what they think of when they hear the words C major. And they had so many fascinating responses. All white keys, the people's key, all natural, no sharps or flats. But when I think of C major, it's a little different. This is what I see when I think of C major. I see music in shapes. Now, I don't have synesthesia, where you have a crossed wire and you see colors or shapes with everything you hear. But music is the most complicated thing that I know. And as a visual thinker, I use visual references to manage all of my understanding of music theory. And I use these systems no matter what I'm playing. It's the same whether it's something really simple or something a little more complicated. The systems are the same. Now, I see my instrument as a grid. So my strings and frets are laid out in boxes. And whenever I play, I put a dot on the grid to mark the note that I'm playing. So when I think of music, I can see it in two different levels. I can think of my note names, A, B, C, D, F sharp, etc. But I can also think of my whole instrument as dots and lines and shapes. So as I play through a scale, I draw a line from each note to the next, and my scale becomes a shape. Now I'm not just thinking in letters and numbers of music, but in these visual patterns. So as I play, every dot gets a line. And then I can take that image off of the grid and see just the dots. And if I go further, I can remove it all and see every scale, every melody, every song as its own unique shape. So this is the harmonic minor scale. It doesn't just sound different from the major scale, it has its own shape in my mind. So everything I play has this visual element to it. And I don't just see it on the instrument. I see it in the air. I see it when I close my eyes. When I turn on the radio and I hear a song that uses that scale, I see that shape on my car windshield while I imagine how I would play it. So music is not just sounds to me, it's shapes. Now, a scale is made up of two kinds of notes. We have the root note, which is always circled, because that tells us what key we're in. But beyond that, we have primary notes and secondary notes. Or if you want to talk in music jargon, we've got chord tones and extensions. So when I think about this music theory, the different kinds of notes, I associate colors with them. So now my C major scale has all of the chord tones in green and the extensions in blue. So my visual map of my instrument and the music I'm playing isn't just shapes, but it's color-coded. So it gives me a quick reference mentally. But when I play, I don't just see the notes I'm playing. I see all of the notes that I'm not playing. And this grid gets a little more complicated. This is C major in my mind. Now we have the important notes in green, the secondary notes in blue, and all the red notes are not in that key. We call those chromatic notes, or I like to call them jazz notes. So when I think of my instrument, when I think of this scale, my whole fretboard lights up like a Christmas tree, and I see all of these colors for every scale, every melody, every song. But it's not just scales. Chords have their own shapes. So a chord for non-musicians is more than one note at a time. So instead of that's a note, that's a chord. So every chord that I play, I draw a line from each note to the next. And based on the fingering and location on my instrument, it creates its own unique shape. So when I play, I'm thinking and reading everything in both traditional music form and in shapes. So this is the chord chart for Autumn Leaves, which is an old standard jazz piece. But when I look at that chart, I don't just see the note names, I see it as a shapes chart. And every one of those chords has a corresponding shape to it. So as I play through the piece, I'm thinking about it in two levels, in music theory and in my own system of shapes. So music has these extra layers in the way that I think. But everything I play has these shapes associated with it. Now, this isn't a choice. This is not something I invented because I thought I was the most clever musician. This is the natural way I process information. I'm a visual thinker. And everything I play has these shapes associated with it. This is a melody that I wrote, and this is what it looks like in my head. Now, when I play through it slowly, that's what I see. These are all of the notes in the melody, and that is the shape that those notes create. Now, what's interesting, I think, is the shape is the same no matter what tempo the piece is played at. So I see that exact same shape even when I play the song. The shape is the same either way. It's how I process the notes, how I put the information together. So music to me is all shapes and colors and visual. I don't know how to play music in any way but visually. Even with my knowledge of the letters and numbers of music theory, my brain naturally processes it best in a visual context. Now, what's interesting to me is that the depth of music isn't just music. Everything has that same level of depth and complexity. And when I have a conversation, I see something way more complicated than C major. I mean, that's easy. But this is hard. This is tricky for me. How we communicate, body language, eye contact, inflection. I feel so much more comfortable playing music than trying to figure this out. But everything has this same depth and complexity in my mind. music just happens to be the thing that I enjoy doing the most and makes the most sense to get out of my head. But my brain isn't just a music brain. Everything has this complexity to it. Now, I played music for over 10 years before I figured this out. I just thought that everyone who plays music is a visual thinker. I thought every person who's ever picked up a guitar saw lines in the air when they played it. And in my 20s, I started asking other musicians, and I had this revelation when I went, wait a minute, I'm the only one. Now, I'm not special and unique. I'm not a delicate snowflake who invented a system. Lots of musicians use visual tools to understand music. The difference is that for me, it's built in. It's natural. There's this extra layer that you can't see from the outside, but the way I experience music is fundamentally different, and it's also invisible. And every time I play, I see these same shapes and colors and ideas, and I don't know what the world would look like if I couldn't. And how can anybody hear this and not see a triangle? I don't know. I don't know how that would work. So when we leave here today, what do we take with us? I think that's the big question. And what I look for is recognizing that all of us have a unique view, a unique perspective, but we often assume that everyone around us shares our view of the world. I walk around thinking every musician sees shapes and colors. You walk around thinking that a balloon popping is no big deal and nobody cares. Or that your coworkers obviously know you were kidding. Or that the guy at the bar wants your phone number. But we all have this unique perspective. And I think the key in supporting not just people with autism, but everyone who's different by whatever label we want to give it, it starts by understanding and recognizing that we all see things differently and respecting that different isn't bad, different is just different, but we often can't see it from the outside. And if we just leave here today, and we keep that in mind. Maybe we don't assume other people see things the way we do. Maybe we take that extra step to make sure that we're both on the same page. Maybe we just ask that one little question. Hey, does the sound of the coffee grinder bother you? Hey, does this fluorescent light get on your nerves? Those little things add up in any environment to all of us working better and having a more respectful coexistence. And it's not that we're completely different, and we're all human. We all have something from that autism checklist. But when we recognize that some of us see things a little bit more different than others, I think that's the starting point for respect and understanding. So I know we're about out of time. I will stick around if anyone has other questions afterwards. I also have books if anyone is interested, and I'm also online at jonathanchase.net. You're welcome to send me an email, give me a call, share my information. I'm a community resource, and I'm here to help. Thank you all for coming.